Begin the current Daf, Mesech this Yoma Daf and Gimel, begin with the top line of the Yommi, where we continue the discussion of the Gitaris, which is the theme that we're up to right now in the Yomei Kippurim from the previous Mishnah. She is corresponds to Bekazik, Krishna, we're joining us today's Daf, should be discussed with Tinik Ben Yehudis. So this is discussing today's Daf, like we said, is a continuation of regarding the Avodas Gitaris of the Kohen Gadol Yom Kippurim. We also continue regarding the exit route of the Kohen Gadol from the Kodesh HaKodeshim and the Tefillah that he says. The next Mishnah continues regarding the Zrikas Adam of the Par Kohen Gadol, as well as the Zrikas Adam and the Shechita of the Sar Hashem, which follows after this Avodah of the Gitaris. So Mekitim, the concepts discussed in today's Daf are Mala Ashan, a special herb that's put into the Gitaris that makes it go straight up like a pillar. Evan Shasiya was this foundation stone that was known by David and by Shmuel, and which the Aron was placed on that, and when the Aron was removed after the first Mikdash, then the Keteris was actually put straight onto the Evan Shasiyah. Kematzlef is like a whip, which is the way the Zrikas Adam were done in the Kodesh HaKodeshim and in the Heichal on Yom Kippur. So begin the current Daf, Daf Nun Gimel, top line of the Amid. So turn on in the Brisa regarding the Keteris. It says in the Pasuk in Vayikra, you should place the Keteris, the incense, on the fire in front of Hashem. So you see clearly in the Pasuk, the placing of the Keteris on the fire should be in front of Hashem. Which that means to say, you should not go ahead and organize and prepare it on the outside and enter like that with the incense already on the coals on the outside. And that's because it's saying you should do it in front of Hashem, which means you should not have placed it outside. And the objective of this teaching is to exclude from the opinion of the Sadducees, that they say no, you should prepare it on the outside, and you should already have the incense on the coals as you're coming in. Says the Gemara, what exactly do the Tzedukim expound? Where did they see fit to say that as they said? Because there's another pasuk that says, V'al Yaveh b'chalei sal hakodesh, Aaron should not come at all times to the holy area. And what does it say? Ki bi'anan eiru ala kaparis. Because only with a cloud am I seen on the kaparis. So the way the Tzedukim translate the pasuk is Ba'al Yavai, he shall not enter the Kodesh HaKodeshim, ki be'anan, except with a cloud. It means it's going on the Ba'al Yavai. The Biyah, the coming in, has to be Ba'anan. You have to come in with the cloud. So the Tzedukim said that, okay, it means to say you have to prepare it on the outside and come in with the cloud. It's on the Al Yavai. Now, Amalim Chacham, the sages said to them, you can't say that, because Baalei Kvan in the pasuk already says, as we said before, it says clearly to put the incense on the fire only when you're in front of Hashem, meaning in the Kodesh HaKodeshim. Okay, then you have a question, and we came at Tamalim, so what does the pasuk mean when it says that with a cloud I'm going to be seen, says Hashem, on the kapiras, which is the covering of the Aron? That teaches something else. It's not going on. The first part of the pasuk is saying not to enter the Kodesh except on Yom Kippur. The second part, is teaching you something else. This teaches that the herb Mala Asham, which causes the smoke to go straight up like a stick, that's what we're saying, because Hashem says, with an anan, with this cloud, I will be seen on the Kapairas, it has to go straight up like a pillar of smoke. But not that, it means to say that you come in with the pillar of smoke. Now that continues the Brisa. How do you know that you put in the Mala Asham in the Keteris? Which one is going to ask, you just said a moment ago, that's the pasuk means keep it on. Why are you asking and you're going to bring a new pasuk? Says the Brisa, it says in the pasuk, it says that the cloud of the incense will cover the kapiras. That teaches you that you have to go ahead and have this Mala Asham, that you have this cloud that's going up above the kapiras. Now, this teaches us from here that the pasuk says, V'lo Yamos, says that if you do this, that if you chisan on the kapiras, then he's not going to die. It teaches lo yinas Mala Asham. If you didn't put in Mala Asham, or even if you're missing one of the ingredients of the Keteris, because as Rashi points out, it says ha-Keteris, the Keteris, which tells you it has to be intact and not missing anything of it. If you don't put in Mala Asham, and we say this in Keteris every single day, or you're missing one of the ingredients, Chayim Misa, you can be liable for death. Okay, but it says the Gemara, the Gemara has a question. It says, it should be sufficient that even if it didn't say V'lo Yamos, you anyways would be Chayiv Misa for bringing in the Keteris that's missing. Even without this halacha that you're learning out Oh, v'lo yomas, which sounds like, oh, only if you have everything you need to have. But if you don't, you're gonna be chayiv misa. What do I mean? It should be sufficient because it's going to be that the kamayel be rekanis. If you are not bringing the keteris as it's supposed to be, that means that you're coming in unnecessarily. Now the pasuk says, "Val yove b'chaleis." Don't come at every single time, as we said the chacham say in the pasuk, where v'lo yamos mean to say, but if you come in unnecessarily without a purpose, then you can be chayiv misa. So why do you have to say the reason is because of the keteris that's lacking, even on them, even without that special halacha of the keteris lacking. If you didn't bring keteris, then you're coming in bira comes, you're coming in for no purpose. So Rav Shloimy says, I can tell you, what are you talking about? He wrote when he came in for no purpose, he was mistaken on that. He thought you're allowed to or whatever, he didn't realize. But he was deliberate. He knew that there's chayiv misa when you bring the keteris that's missing. And since there's no punishment of misa on the shaygig, so he cannot be chayiv for coming in unnecessarily because he was a shaygig. But only because of the limud of missing of the keteris would he be chayiv misa. That's why you have to say that teaching. Rav Shloimy gives a different answer. He says, "I feel his bezu bezu." You could even say he was deliberate regarding both, coming in unnecessarily and also bringing a keteris that's missing. But going to Eilish to Haktaris, we're talking about where in this one coming in, he brought in two different keteris. Achas shlema v'achas chaser. One was complete and one was lacking. So therefore, it says the Yoma like this: a biloi mechayev coming in unnecessarily is not going to be liable to Eilish shlema. He came in for a reason. He brought a intact keteris, but aktar mechayev. But he would be liable for the keteris because the kamak the keteris chaser. He's bringing the keteris that's lacking. So the two answers explain why it would be necessary to say this halacha of bringing in the insufficient keteris. If anyways you come, that means you're not coming in for any purpose. No, you would be either because of the shayging or because of you have two keteris and therefore you're doing a shlema, but you'd be chayiv for the chaser. Now Amamar, the Gemara goes back to explain which we had already alluded to the question before. The Brisa asked him, "Minayin should listen about maloshin." How do you know that you have to put in this maloshin, the special herb, into the keteris? Tamalim Bechisa says the Brisa will tell you because the Bechisa and then the keteris, which means they have to make like a pillar of smoke on top of it, which is through the maloshin. It says the Gemara, kra. You need a pasuk for a pasuk? You read it up in the prior pasuk, which you said nalik tzedukah. It's from kiba anan idral kaparis. You said that you translated that it needs to have an anan, which is through maloshin. So why do you need to bring another pasuk for? So Rabbi Yisrael says, "Hachakam," and this is what the Brisa is saying. Ainli Allah maloshin. I would only know the leaf of the maloshin plant that would be sufficient for the halacha of the keteris, but ikr maloshin, but the root of the maloshin. Minayin, how do I know that even that is going to work from the ingredients of the keteris? In other words, you need another pasuk to say it's not just the leaf of the plant, but also the root is also sufficient. Abai says, how can you say it? But exactly the opposite, meaning from the Brisa we're going to quote, we see that the primary for the maloshin is actually the root and not the leaf. The time we learn the Brisa. Nothing but ikr maloshin, that's the point of bringing this Brisa. You see that the Brisa is saying that the primary is the root. They would put in the root of the maloshin, and so the pillar of smoke would be a fume that would go straight up like a stick, until it went up to, literally means say to the sky of the roof, but it's like a lashon of shemayim, went up to the roof, it would shoot straight up, and once it reached to the top of the roof, then it would come down on the walls, because that's how smoke usually is. When it can't go to the sides, it goes straight up till it fills up the whole house, and then it goes from wall to wall, and when it has no more room, so then it goes down the walls itself. Now, until the whole house, meaning the Kodesh would fill up with smoke. Somebody says the pasuk in Yeshaya, the house would fill up with smoke. Okay, but the primary thing that we see is that the ikr, the root, is what they would put in, not the leaf. So on that says Allah Mabai says you're right, but this is what we meant to say. I would only know the root of the maloshin that would work. Allah maloshin, how do I know that the leaf of the maloshin would also work? That's what the pasuk teaches. That's one interpretation why you needed these two psukim for the maloshin. First interpretation was because I would only know the root. And the second pasuk come and tell me even the leaf of the maloshin also work. Another interpretation of Sheshes on me, he says, I would only know the tent of the assembly, meaning the mishkan that was in the midbar. That's where they had this halacha of the maloshin. Shila Beis Elamim Minayin. How do I know that Shila, which they had later when they came to Eretz Yisrael, and the Beis Hamikdash, which is the eternal house, how do I know that they're also at that maloshin? That's why you need another pasuk bechisa. On that the Gemara says, but you can't say that because hi, that is me, as we have from the pasuk in the Yikra. We learn it out. The pasuk says, and that's how you should do for the tent of assembly, hashechen itam, which means to say, whichever place that Hashem has His divine presence over there, you should do that, which obviously refers to Shila and Beis Elamim. So you wouldn't need the second pasuk of Bechisa to teach you this halacha. So Allah rather says, no, this is what we meant to say. I would only know that you need Malashon on Yom Kippurim, which that's what the Pesukim are talking about over here. How do you know it has to be all other days of the year when they have Keteris every single day? It just wasn't the Kedusha Kadishim. How do you have to put a Malashon? That's the second pasuk Bechisa, which we already said. Bechisa, what do you need to have it again? To tell you that even every day is Keteris. A third approach of Yomah, he says, Chad LaMitzvah, Chad LaAkiv. One pasuk is telling you that initially should be done. And one's telling you that should be ma'akiv, which Teisus discusses, doesn't say chukah, and therefore we know it's ma'akiv. Teisus explains why it would be necessary, but we have one pasuk telling you that initially it should be like that, and one telling you that it's actually integral, and if not, it's not going to be valid. A fourth approach, Rav Ami says, chad la'einish b'chad la'asar. One pasuk is teaching you the punishment, one pasuk is teaching you the warning. Now, when it says v'al yavik ki ba'anan, that's the asar, that's the warning, don't, except with a cloud, it's telling you what you should do. And when it says v'chisa nan v'liyamas, and the cloud will cover, and then you won't die, well, that's referring to the punishment. Which Rashi says, although it does say v'liyamas in the pasuk about Yava, which saying that's Azhar, why is talking about Einish over there? So that Rashi explains, not going on the chisaron of the anan of when you're missing malashon. It's just warning you regarding bir rekanas. That's going on, not coming in empty-handed with nothing. But so too, we learned the Brisa that these two psukim, one talking about Einish, one talking about Azhar. Rabbi Loza Omer, he says in the pasuk the chisa that you'll cover the iri the kodesh kodesh with a cloud, and then the lo yamas you're not going to die. That's referring to einish. That's referring to the punishment if you don't bring the malashon. And when it says ki ba'anan deirah, but rather with a cloud I should be seen, that's azhar. That's the warning. That's telling you what you should do. Now, the Raisa continues on this theme regarding one pasuk telling you the einish, one telling you the azhar. Which generally every punishment the Torah has a azhar, a warning, and a punishment. So Yachol Yushneim Amurim, you would think that both the Psukim, the Asar and the Einish, were said before the death of the sons of Aaron. In other words, you would say, we know that they famously died when they brought in Keteris. Because of the sin of not being Malashon, maybe that's why they died. It says the pasuk you can't say that because it says Achri Moshe ben Aaron. It says after the death of the sons of Aaron, that's Pash Achri Moshe, which talks about the ways of Yom. Only then does it talk about the Chiv of the Malashon. So obviously it wasn't before that they died. Now, so then so then you would think, okay, maybe both psukim of the Asar and the Einish were both after the death of Aaron. No, Tamalim, the other pasuk teaches people on their all the kapiros, because with a cloud I will be seen, says Hashem on the kapiros. That was before they died. So okay, so how do we explain this? So I'll tell you, Asara koydemisa. The warning was before they died. And the punishment, where it says in the Torah that what you do wrong, if you're not going to do this, you're going to miss the malashon, that you're going to die. That was said after they had died. So the Gemara says, "My Talmudah, what's the source for this? How do you know that the Azhara, the pasuk that said that the warning was before, in contrast to the Einish?" So because the pasuk says, "Ki ba'anan eirah." Hashem is saying, because with the cloud, with the malashon, eirah is how I will be seen. That sounds like in the future tense. Obviously, when this pasuk was said, was vadayim le'nira. That means Hashem has never appeared yet when the Keteris was done. And if you would think to say that it was after the sons of Aaron had died, well, that day that they died, they already saw the divine presence, like the pasuk says in Yikra Taz, V'yitzu, it says, V'yvorchos am, V'yever chavayt Hashem al kol ha'am. So obviously, we're talking about over here, that the warning was before that they died, because it was after, then it wouldn't say Eirah, Hashem had already been seen. So obviously, the warning was before, and the other pasuk was clearly Achri Moshe ben Aaron was the punishment was after they had died. So the Gemara says, wait, so then why did the sons of Aaron? Why did they get punished? In other words, we're assuming that they got punished because they were missing malashon. This is when they brought the Keteris. So I understand they were warned beforehand, but the punishment in the Torah to tell you what punishment you're going to get, which is the death penalty, which is what they got, was only said after they died. So you can't get a punishment that wasn't already said. It had to have already been said beforehand. So why'd they get punished? Says the Gemara, it's actually for a different reason, like we learned in the Brisa. He says, they didn't die because of they missing malashon, because you're right, Hashem didn't yet say the punishment for that. It's because they ruled a teaching of halacha in front of their teacher, Moshe Rabbeinu. Which Tosfos actually brings that other places in Gemaras and Torah's Canon, they actually say many different reasons why. Either because they had Vayichel, Vayishtu, Vayachisu, Alikim, they were looking at God at Har Sinai, and they still ate and they drank, which is inappropriate. Or because they said, when are these elders going to die? And me and you, we're the young ones, we're going to take over the doors, and the elder the doors, let's take over. Or because they had long hair, or because they drank wine, or because they were lacking from their kind of garments. But our Gemara says, because they ruled in front of Moshe Rabbeinu. Says the Gemara, my Darsh, what was the drasha that they made in front of Moshe Rabbeinu, which, although they were right, they weren't supposed to do in front of Hashem, in front of Moshe Rabbeinu. It says, the pasuk says that the sons of Aaron, the Kohen, they should place a fire on the Mizbeach. What that teaches is, although there was a miracle that there was a heavenly fire that came down that was on the Mizbeach, it's still a mitzvah to bring it from human beings, from the sons of Aaron. So again, although that is a correct ruling, they were punished because they didn't take permission to speak in front of Moshe Rabbeinu, and that's why they got punished. But you're right, they didn't get punished because they didn't bring Ma'ala Ashim, because their punishment wasn't yet said. Continue with the halacha of the Mishnah, that we said that Yatsa, the Kohen Gadol, so we spoke about in the Mishnah how he would do the Ketairos and he'd put it between the bottom. And then we said that Yatsa, he would leave, Uvale Derech Knisasai. And that is, he would go out the way he actually came in, which was that he was facing towards, he would walk backwards, he would face towards the Aron as he was walking back. Says, where do we know this halacha from? So Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg says, because Amar Krel says in Dibur Yoma Beis, Rabbi Shloimy Labama, Shlomo Melech came to the altar, Asher Begiven that was in Givon. Again, this is before the Beis Hamikdash was built. Yerushalayim. Now the problem is, it should have said from Yerushalayim, because Givon is a different place than Yerushalayim. So it should have said that Shlomo Melech was coming to the altar that was in Givon from Yerushalayim. Or it should have said from the Bama that was in Givon to Yerushalayim. Right? But it shouldn't have said that's in Givon Yerushalayim. Because Givon had the holy place, because that's what Mizbeach that Moshe Rabbeinu had made was there, and he was going to sacrifice over there. So like the Gemara says, "V'chima'in Givon that's Yerushalayim." Why is Givon have to be Yerushalayim? So Ella rather because Makish is coming to compare Yitzi Asim and Givon Yerushalayim, the way he leaves from Givon to Yerushalayim, Libi Asim Yerushalayim the Givon to how he comes from Yerushalayim to Givon. In other words, the way you read the pasuk is V'yavei Shlomo Labama Asher B'Givon. Meaning Shlomo Melech came to the Bama that's in Givon the way he would go, and also to Yerushalayim. Meaning when he would leave from Givon, it was the same as how he came, it's the same as how he left. What does that mean? Yerushalayim to Givon, just like when he would come from Yerushalayim to Givon. Obviously, Panat Klapi Bama Kederech B'Yasa, his face would be towards the altar the way he's coming in. After Yitziyasa and Givon Yerushalayim, so too when he was leaving from Givon to Yerushalayim, Panav Klapi Bama Kederech B'Yasa, his face was towards the altar the way he came in, meaning he would walk back exactly the same direction as he came. His face, it was the same direction, his face would be towards the Bama, he would walk backwards. And says the Gemara, when they did their Avodah, when they would be in there on the platform, when they would be singing and playing, and the Jewish people, when they would be in their stations, they would stand in the Azara in place of all the Jewish people on the carbon tum, like the pasuk says in Mamid B'Chavches Tishmu Lahakavli, that you should stand there and be shomer on your karbonis, which Tishay Nefton, when they would take leave from doing the Avodah, whether it be Kanal B'Yim Yisraelim, and they wouldn't turn their face around and walk out, and they'd rather turn their face towards the side and walk like basically backwards. So too, when the student takes leave of his teacher, he doesn't turn around and walk away. And the rather he turns his face toward the side and he walks basically sideways as he's turning away. As we find Rabbi Lazar, when he would take leave from Rabbi Yechanan, so it depends who would walk away. When Rabbi Yechanan wanted to walk away, Rabbi Lazar would just stand there and bent over in his place. Rabbi Yechanan would be, Rabbi Lazar couldn't see anymore, that Rabbi Yechanan was already covered, then he would leave. And Rabbi Lazar wanted to walk away. He would walk backwards, until Rabbi Yechanan couldn't see him anymore, and then he would go and turn his face away and walk away. When Rava would take leave of Rav Yosef, he would walk backwards until he would bang up his feet, and the thresholds of Rabbi Yisrael would become so dirtied with blood, because he would be knocking himself. He hit the corner of the bed, the pointy table that he's walking backwards and knock himself. He would be bloodied because he didn't want to be disrespectful and just walk away, and he was walking out backwards. Now, as we continue to the base, they said to Rabbi Yisrael, who he was blind and he didn't realize this is what Rabbi was doing. They said, Rabbi, this is what Rabbi is doing. So you see, it's not about the Rabbi necessarily. You see, it's about yourself, the honor you have to give. So Amalei, he said to Rabbi, let it be the will, the Tarm Rishach, that your head should be lifted up, meaning that you should be the Rosh Hashiva, a Kula Kracha from the whole city, because again of the great honor that he was showing to the Talmid Chacham, to his Rebbe, to Rabbi Yisrael. Now, a related halacha, Omer Alexandri, Omer B'Shubal Levi, says in a spal, someone who's davening, we do the same thing. We also walk backwards. You have to take 3 steps back when you're taking leave from Hashem, and then you give your greeting as a way of taking leave, which we say. He says Shalom, Shalom, we say Shalom. It's like a greeting. You say Shalom when you're saying hi or when you're leaving. So only Rav Mordechai says, when the person takes these 3 steps back, that's where he has to stand in the place where he had finished taking his steps, and not to go back right away. Because Mashal Tama and Niftim Rabbi could compare this to a student who's taking leave of his teacher. If he walks right away back, he's like a dog that goes back on his excrement, which means to say you're making the same mistake. You're taking a step back. You want to show that you're giving that deference. You don't walk right back. The point is to take a moment back, Daladamas, as you wait for this taking leave. Similar in the Bryce and the Spal, someone who daven himself has to take 3 steps back, and then he gives his farewell greeting. And he doesn't do this, so it looks like as if he's not taking permission to take leave, because he's not walking back and saying shalom. So it would have been better for this person had he not davened, because that's more disrespectful than the whole thing. When the name of Shmaya, they said, what you do is you first give a greeting to the right side, then to the left side. Showing says a passage in Devar, it says from his right is where he gives a fiery law to his people. So you see, the right is more important. But says a passage in Tehillim, from your left side will fall 1,000, and 10,000 from your right side. So again, you see that the right side tolerates 10,000 mazikim. That's the more powerful side. So you do the right side first, and then you do the left side. It says, why do you have to bring a second pasuk? Because if you're going to say, maybe it's just the norm to give with the right hand, the Torah, because the right hand is more prepared, it's just the most useful for utility. So therefore Hashem gives the luchas to the right hand, but not necessarily it's the chashibas of the right hand. So Shema, as we were another pasuk, that'll fall from your side 1,000, and 10,000 from your right. You see that the right side, Machash is different. You first, when you take leave, you turn to the right, and then to the left. Now, the Gemara brings a story that will illustrate this halacha. Rabbi Chazila Abaye. Rabbi saw Abaye, the Yom Shalom Yomina, Verdesha, that when he took 3 steps back, he first turned to the right and gave Shalom, and then to the left. Amalei said, do you think I meant your right side? L'smal come in. I was talking about your left side. So what do you mean? Why do you say right first? No, Daf Yomi Shal Kadosh Baruch Hu, because that's the right side of Kadosh Baruch Hu. Because someone who's davening sees himself as if the divine presence is right opposite him. Like it says in the pasuk opening of Orach Chaim, Shivisa Hashem L'negdi Samet. I place Hashem opposite me constantly. So when you're turning to your left, that's Hashem's right. And when you're going to your right, that's Hashem's left. So you first do to your left, which is Hashem's right, and then to your right. Now, Amar Rav Chiya B'Rei Rav Huna says, Chazin Lu L'Abai B'Rabba says, I would see Abai B'Rabba, the Pasuk Shlosh P'siyas, that this they would take the 3 steps back, would be B'Kriyachas with one bend like we do. We bend down, and we take the 3 steps back, and then we say, I said Shalom, we say to the left, then to the right, and again we wait the amount of time that's appropriate, whether it be Daladamas, and then a person walks back. Now we said in the Mishnah that a Mispal Tefillah Getzar B'Beis HaChitzon, that the Kohen Gadol would say a small prayer in the outer chamber, meaning in the Heichel, after he came out of the Kodesh HaKadosh. Says the Mamai Matzeh, what's the grace of Tefillah that the Kohen Gadol once a year on Yom Kippurim, after he just came out of the Lefnaim, the holiest place, what was the prayer that he would say? So Rava bar Avada, Rav bar Avada, two brothers, Tarvayi Mishmei Rava, they both said as follows: Yirtzeh Lefanecha Hashem Elokeinu, may it be the will in front of you, Hashem our God. That this year should be rainy and hot. Being hot is a benefit. Why they davening for a hot year? This was the tefillah of the Kohen Gadol. If it's going to be hot, let it at least be raining. That's the way they say. Now, he would say that there was a conclusion to this tefillah, and he said the name of Rabbi Yehuda. Should not be removed those who are in charge of the sovereignty, in charge of the rulership, from the house of the Yehuda, the house of Judea, of the Davidic dynasty. That should always be maintained. They should be the leaders in charge of leadership. And that it shouldn't be that the Jewish people should have to support themselves one from the other. And it should not come in front of you the prayers of the wayfarers, of those who are traveling on the roads, because they're going to daven that it shouldn't rain. You don't want to get stuck in the rain. That was the tefillah of the Kohen Gadol. Interestingly, the Teis Hashem adds on from the Yishami that ended off the tefillah, meaning that they shouldn't try to have their contentious leadership one with the other, that you're fighting about who's more in charge of what. And that was also part of the tefillah. You just get an insight of what's the tefillah of Kohen Gadol in Yom Kippur. And the Gemara says that this idea that the Kohen Gadol was concerned about, the tefillah of every drachim, which the Bali Machshava, they say that what the Kohen Gadol is so concerned about the tefillah, because it's also echte tefillah. I got a tefillah come be davening, what I'm saying? We daven to about davening. Someone's stuck in the rain, he said, Taka is davening. They say the joke with the Ruv was there on the up of the Bezdin Shamala, and there's a taxi driver, and then the Ruv, they said, okay, we'll give him a chaylik, where he's going to get Olam Emes. And the taxi driver, they gave him mamish higher than the Ruv. He says, how could it be? I was a Ruv, a ganze Leben, I was been, and this taxi driver, how does he get more? He said, you understand, when you would speak, people will fall asleep. When he would drive, people would pray. When he was driving, they would daven, So sometimes, true davening, comes at times when you really need it. So that was the tefillas Eivri Drachim. The Gemara actually shows that, specifically certain Eivri Drachim, that Reb Chanina ben Daisa, he was going on the road. So it started raining on him. Amay says, the world, the whole world, they're enjoying themselves, they're in the house, they're whatever, they're having a good time, and I'm in pain here, I'm getting all wet on the road. So Pasuk Mitra stopped raining. When he came home, he says, the world, the whole world's in pain, and I'm taking it easy because I don't have any fields to be planted. So they're in pain that it's not raining, and I'm okay now because I'm all dry in my house. So then Asa Mitra started raining. So Rabbi Yisrael says, "My hanulate sliz the Kohen Gadol. What is already affected? The prayer of the Kohen Gadol, like Rabbi Chanina ben Daisa. The whole tefillah of the Kohen Gadol was that the Eivri Drachim should not be affected. And here he goes, and the ein tefillah macht avek the Kohen Gadol's tefillah on Yom Kippur lefanai v'lefnim because of his prayer. Now, tomorrow in the Brayso, Moshe b'Kohen Gadol echad she'erech b'tfilas. There was a story of one Kohen Gadol that he was davening along tefillah on Yom Kippur. And then they said, okay, this is bitter, it's not good, it's taking too long. It's taking, they have certain minutes they know, and with these missions. And the fellow comes and says, we gotta go in after him. So they started going in, said, we gotta go in, we have to see what happened. He's coming out. They said to him, so why did you do such a long davening? They said to him, is it so difficult on you that I'm davening on you? And the Olam has to wait for the Ruv. Yeah, the Ruv is davening for the Keilah. Everyone's murmuring. Nehmt so long, nehmt so long. I'm davening for you. Who do you think I'm davening for already? And the Beis Hamikdash shouldn't be destroyed. They said to him, but don't be accustomed to doing this. Because we learned in our mission, he wouldn't do a long prayer, so not to frighten the Jewish people. They're worried. Kohen Gadol is the emissary, he's the representing them, and if he doesn't come out, it's not a good year, which actually Teis Hashem brings from the Yishami, that this was Shimon HaTzadik. That he was the one who was Marach once B'tfilah, and they were all afraid that he shouldn't do that again. We learned the next Mishnah continues on this theme of the Ketairis, Ben Abadim. So the Mishnah says, Mishanitzel Oren, when the Oren was removed, as we already mentioned on the previous daf, there was a time and period in history before the second Beis Hamikdash that it was removed. So then Evan Haisisham, there was a stone over there, Mimais Navim Rishonim, from the earlier prophets, that's David and Shmuel, as the Gemara says in Seitat and Mechazim Beis. It was called the foundation stone, which Gemara is going to explain exactly why it was called that. Now, it was Gavayim in the Arid Shalash's place. It was elevated from the ground 3 finger breadths, not so high. And on that is where they would put the Keteris, meaning the Arid used to be on that, when it wasn't in the time of Beis Hamikdash, so they would actually put the Keteris on the Evan Shasi itself. Now, the Mishnah continues that not less Adam, Mimisha Yimamaras place. So they took the blood from, meaning after they did the Keteris, so if you recall, he had shechted already his par before they brought the Keteris. And someone was mixing it to make sure it doesn't congeal. Then they did the Keteris, and now, not less Adam, Mimisha Yimamaras place, so he took the blood from the one that was mixing it. Nichnes Lamakim Shenichnes. So now again, he went back into the place we had previously gone into, which is in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. He stood in the place where he stood before, which is the Ben Abada. Meaning we're essentially saying that this avodah that he had done, he's going back to the same place that he had been already beforehand, which is into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. And the Hizmim, and he sprayed from it, Achas Lamala V'Shev Lamata. He sprayed 1 upwards and 7 downwards of the blood of his par of the Yom Kippur. Now, says the Mishnah, but he was not intending to spray truthfully. He wasn't really spraying upwards, meaning that one should go on the top part of the upper part of the kapyrus, which would sound like that if you're spraying upwards, he wants to get the upper part of the kapyrus, which is what covers the aron. But neither were the other 7 spraying downwards towards the, let's say, the thicker part of the aron, because again, he wasn't really spraying, he wasn't touching the kapyrus. Rather, it was actually falling on the ground. So it wasn't in Achas Lamala B'Shev Lamata, Ela Kamatzlav. Rather, it was in a row, one beneath the other, all these 8 sprays, which like Taisa says, that it means that in the motion, the Achas Lamala meant to say that he took his hand, the palm was facing upwards, and he would spray one upwards, and then the Shev Lamata, which was, his palm was facing downwards. But it was all 8 in a row, one after the other. This is how he would count, which he wasn't explaining exactly why did he count such an interesting way. Count achas 1, achas ve'achas 1 and 1, achas v'shtayim 1 and 2, achas v'sholosh 1 and 3, achas v'arba 1 and 4, achas v'chamish 1 and 5, achas v'sheish 1 and 6, achas v'sheva 1 and 7. That was the 1 up and the 7 down. Now Yatsa, so after he sprayed the blood of the par of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, he put it on, there was a golden stand in the Heichel. So again, he was in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. He comes out, he puts that blood, which is in that bowl, on the stand in the Heichel. Then Hevi'u Lesasar. Then he goes out of the Heichel, they bring in the Sar Lashem, right? There's these 2 korbanos, besides the Keteris, that's brought off with them. There's the blood of these 2 korbanos, the par, that's for him and his fellow Kahanim, for his family, then there's the Sar, which is 2 siyum, Sar Lashem, Sar Lazazel. The Sar Lazazel, the lottery, throw it off the cliff, and which we didn't get up to yet, and the Sar Lashem, which is also brought inside to atone for Tumas Mikdash Gedashos, which is the equivalent what the par does for the Kohen Gadol and his family. There's many of the Tumah in the holy areas. It atones for them. So Shachta, he shechted the Sar Lashem. The Kibbutz Mizik Dama, he received in the bowl its blood, and so Nichnas Lamakim for Nichnas, he goes back into the place where he had gone before. He stands in the place that he stood before, Ben Abadim. But he's a man, and he sprays from this blood of the Sar Lashem. Achas Lamala V'Shev Lamata 1 upwards and 7 downwards. This is how he counted. Achas 1, Achas v'Achas 1 and 1, Achas v'Shtayim 1 and 2, V'Chu, etc. He went through the whole counting of Achas v'Sheva. Okay, Yotze, he left the Kodesh HaKadoshim. V'Nichal Ken Azav Hashem Shebeichel. He put on the second golden stand that was in the Heichel. That's what the Tanakhama learns. That with these 2 stands, one for the blood of the par, one for the blood of the Sar. Yudam, he says, he says, no, it's not true. There was only 1 stand. So actually what he did was, not Damapar, he actually first had to take off the bowl of the blood of the bull, and then Manich Damasar, and then he went and put down the blood of the Higot, like Rashi explained. That's the conclusion of the statement. Since there was only 1 stand, so he had to obviously first take off the blood of the bull, so that he could then be able to put down the blood of the Sa'ir, which was already on the stand from the blood of the bull that was there before. Now, we already sprayed both of them in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, but now that he took the blood of the bull back again from the stand, now he would do it in the outside of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, meaning in the Heichel. he would spray from the blood of the bull on the pareiches, which is the curtain that's opposite the aron on the outer part, meaning in the heichel part, like the pasuk says, he has to do the same thing now in the heichel. He did in the kodesh. Now he does a similar thing in the heichel. One upwards, 7 downwards. And it wasn't like that he was intending one to go up higher up and 7 lower down. Rather, it's that kamatzla. And that's how he would count. And he would do he did the same old thing here now towards the pareiches. Then when he finished with the damapar, took the blood of the he-goat, and he put down the blood of the bull. And then he sprayed from it on the curtain, on the opposite the ear of the aron, meaning directly facing, but on the outside of the curtain in the heichel. He did one upwards, 7 downwards, etc., which he would do the 8 sprays. After he did from the blood of the bull and of the sar, he then mixed the blood of the bull together with the blood of the he-goat, which, like the pasuk says regarding the gifts on the mizbech, which means it went from the blood of the bull and from the blood of the he-goat, meaning from the blood of both of them together. As the Gemara explains, what do you mean he put the full one into the empty one? He would then go ahead and mix it again. He would pour we mixed them all together in one bowl. Then he took from the full bowl and put it into the empty bowl so that it gets mixed really well, the bloods of the bull and of the he-goat. But the Gemara makes a diuk that our Mishnah said, Mishanitul Oren, Evan Haisasham. So says the Gemara, Mishaniknus, like it doesn't say from when it was concealed away. Ela Mishanitul, rather it says when it was taken away. Says the Gemara, it's not Kamadama, this is teaching like the one who says that Aaron Gal the bubble, which we had discussed this on the previous daf. There is an opinion that holds that the Aaron was not hid in the base of Mikdash, as we had previously said. Rather, it was exalted to bubble. The time we win the Brisa. It says Aaron Gal the bubble. The ark was taken to exalt to bubble. Like says it wasn't the Yom base. Was Shuvas Hashanah to the turn of the year. Shalach HaMelech Nebuchadnezzar, King Nebuchadnezzar sent and they brought Yehoiachin, who was the king. He brought him Bavel to Bavel. In Klei Chemdas, based with the vessels that are the desirable vessels of the house of Hashem. What's the most desirable vessel of the Beis Hamikdash? That was the Aron, and that was brought to Bavel. He says, yes, Aron Gal Bavel. He says the ark was exalted to Bavel, but he brings up a different passage. Hashem says nothing will be left over in the Beis Hamikdash. I mean, everything's going to be taken to exile. What's davar? Those are the 10 commandments. The dibros, the davar, that was also taken because the Aron was exalted to Bavel. Yehuda, and he disagrees. He says, no, Aron ben Krem Nignas, as we had said in the previous stuff, that the ark was concealed in its place. Like says, the Yuro Rashi Habadim, that it was seen the edges of the sticks of the Aron, Min HaKodesh, from the holy area, Al Panei HaDavir, on the surface of the wall that separated between the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKodeshim. But it was not seen on the outside, but it was still sticking out, which the Gemara elsewhere explains that contradiction. But Yusham Adayim and it was there until today, which obviously is to say it's somewhere there, it's just concealed away, and therefore must be that it's still there. Something to discuss in today's Daf and Yoma, Daf and Gimel. We said that from the pasuk of a Nasan, that's like a Ketyrus, that you should place the Ketyrus and you should put it on the fire in front of Hashem. So obviously we say the placing of the Ketyrus has to be in front of Hashem, that you should not prepare it outside and come inside. And what does the Al and Eira come to teach? Not like the Tzedukim. Rather, that comes to say that you should put in it Mala Asham, that you have to have a cloud. Now, if you didn't, then you're going to be Chayiv Misa, because it says there, V'lo Yomot. Now the question is, why don't you just say that you'll be Chayiv Misa, because it's B'yir Kanus, you're coming in for no purpose, you're not doing any Abayit. So either the Gemara says because no, you were shagag in the coming in, so shagag would not be about Chayiv Yomisa, but you were hazed with the Haktar. Or we're talking about when you brought in 2 Ketayos. One was complete, so it wasn't for unnecessary, it wasn't being rekanus, but the other one was chasr, so it'd be Chayiv Misa for the Ketayos that's chasr. The question is, we have 2 psukim the Brisa brings from Malash, and why 2 psukim? So either because the second pasuk is teaching you that not only the root but even the leaf of the Malashim, or it's going to teach you not only in Kippur but even regarding other days of the year, or one's Lamitzah and one's La'akir, or one teaching you the Einish, one teaching you the Azar. And we said that the Azar was before the Misa b'nei Aaron, but the Einish was after. So then why did they get punished by being killed, by bringing the Ketayos, if the punishment was not yet said before they did that? So actually the Gemara says no, the punishment was actually for a different reason, because they were Hoyer Alachim of Rabban, which they said the teaching that it's the mitzvah to bring Eish, min ha'hedit, where it says there in the Pasuk, b'nei Aharon, and that they taught in front of Moshe Rabbeinu without Rishus, that's why they died, but not because of not bringing them al Ashram Viktaris. We said in the Mishnah that the Kohen Gadol would leave the way that he came, which we learn out from the Pasuk. It says, be given Yerushalayim. Well, given Yerushalayim are two different places. Rather to compare, just like the way you come to given is how you leave from given to Yerushalayim, which is like a student that's taking leave from his teacher, which is that you walk backwards, and we find that the same way the halachas of tefillah, you have to take 3 steps backwards, it has to be with one bow, you have to give shalom when you leave, and you first do it to your left side, which is Hashem's right side, and you also wait, and only then do you go back. We said that the Kohen Gadol was mispal tefillah ketzara. The reason why it was so shalei lahavis, not to frighten them what's going on, what's taking so long. And also, what was the tefillah? We said that it should be, if it's hot, it should be rainy. And we said it should not come in the tefillah of the Drachim, should not be removed from Malchus Beis Yehuda, the Davidic dynasty. And that was his tefillah. We said that, look, it wasn't so effective with Chanina ben Daisa, that he even was bigger than the tefillah of the Kohen Gadol when he was on the road. But then the next mission, when the Aron was taken away, which we said that wording seems to indicate like the Mandama that it was exiled to Babel, because it wasn't a Mishnignas, it was taken away. Then there was the Eben Shasiyah, the foundation stone that was always there. So then they would do the Keteris on the Eben Shasiyah. Then we said that he went and he took the blood. He would do with the power Achas Lamala, Shav Lamata. Then he did the same thing for the Sar, and then he did the same thing for both of them in the Heichel and Berechas. And then he actually mixed it together, the two of them, the power and the Sar. Thank you for any time for hosting us.